What's up, G?
Do you know what happens when you start early?
I do, G. You grow wealthy.
It's time for Money with Mac and G.
Finance for you and your family.
Grant, what are you doing?
Whoa, this thing is hard. Dad's hoverboard is also so cool.
You know you shouldn't be on that thing. It's dangerous, and if Dad finds out, he'll kill you.
I can do it. I just need a little bit more time.
Why don't you get off, and let's finish our discussion with Dad about the stock market crash.
This thing is fun. Watch this. Whoa!
Grant, this is really risky. If I didn't know any better, here comes the biggest hoverboard crash of all time.
Why would you say that?
Seriously? It's like the stock market crash. A couple things were going on at the same time that led to the crash. 1, you think you can't fall. 2, you're on a hoverboard. And 3, if you look around, you'll see the water makes things slippery.
Never going to happen. Whoa, 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 whoa! Oh no!
Perfect. Just like the stock market crash. You didn't see it coming, but there are lots of clues.
That's not funny. My arm hurts. Ouch!
Oh no, I guess the party's over, and it's time to deal with the consequences.
Grant, what the heck are you
I
doing?
didn't mean to. Ouch!
Well, in reality, Grant really broke his arm, and we posted it on social media last week. Grant, is there anything you want to say?
Well, probably not a good idea to get crazy on a hoverboard. I actually broke my arm in 2 places and had to get surgery and get pins in it. Totally not cool, and Dad says it was seriously expensive.
It was, and I agree. That was nuts. We're all glad you're doing better, and I love the $ on your new cast. You rock!
Thanks, Dad. I don't think I'll be doing that again anytime soon. Do you think we should get back to the stock market?
That's probably a good idea. Mac, do you want to remind us exactly where we were?
Sure. After the war, people were happy, spending money, and new technology was invented. And stock prices went up 10 times. But companies weren't audited, and they were lying about how well they were doing.
Exactly. So people bought stocks based on bad information, and what was worse is that they borrowed money from the bank to do it. Money was really easy to get, too.
Oh no, that sounds terrible. That doesn't sound good, borrowing money on bad info. And this was one of those times it was easy to get money, right?
It was very easy to get money during this period. Remember, it was called the crazy years, but the rules today are much different. They're tougher, and it's not as easy.
Okay, so people borrowed money, used it in the stock market that went up by 10 times, and the information wasn't always correct.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Mac. Grant, what do you think happened next?
Is this where the stock market crash comes in? Did it all happen at once?
It is when things started. On October 24th, 1929, the bad stuff really started to get going. They called that day Black Thursday. In a handful of days, 1/4 of the value of all stocks were lost.
That does not sound good.
I agree. Bad stuff.
Nasty.
Horrible.
Yucky.
You're all right. Grant, what if you start with $100 and lose 1/4? How much do you lose in just a couple days?
Well, if you broke 104 even parts, that would be 25. Your investment would drop to 75.
And if you had $200 worth of stock, Mac, what would it be worth after the drop?
It would drop $50, which is twice of 25. It would go down to $150.
Yep, that's right. That's a lot in just a couple days. And by the time it was all over, stocks lost 80%. So your $100 goes down to $20. Ouch. What do you think happened next?
If people borrowed money and couldn't pay it back to the bank, did something happen to all the banks with the losses?
It got really bad, and the banks went bankrupt or out of business because they couldn't pay their bills.
But didn't you say that the bank loans money from the deposits from its customers?
They do.
So did the people who put their money in the bank lose it too because all of their loans didn't get repaid?
Wait, you can't lose your money in the bank because it's insured by the government.
You're both right.
What?
That doesn't make any sense. You can't have both. People can't lose their money and it also be guaranteed by the government.
I agree, but here's what happened. there was a bank run.
Funny. Did you say the bank ran like in a marathon? What?
Okay, Dad, now you're talking whack.
Well, after a while, when the stock prices dropped so much, people realized that the banks might have a problem. And they thought about losing any of their deposits. And they also thought that the bank would run out of money.
Where's my money?
Oh man, that's nuts! So if you put your savings into the bank and knew it was going to be bad, you'd race to the bank to try and get your money out.
You'd probably drop whatever you were doing.
Exactly. People did run to the bank to get their money. That's called a bank run. There were long lines of people waiting their turn in order to get all of that money out, and it went on for blocks.
Did people get angry if they couldn't get their money back?
They did. Lots of bad things started to happen.
Sounds like it went from really fun times to really bad times.
You're exactly right. Before 1933, if a bank run happened, people lost all of their money in the bank because it wasn't insured.
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh, Dad. So this crash hurt so many people. It hurt the people that borrowed money, the banks.
The people who deposited their money with the banks, and did it hurt others?
Absolutely. If people lost their money and banks weren't around to loan money, what do you think happened next?
People wouldn't buy things, which meant companies then didn't make as much.
So they didn't need as many people to work, which meant less money to be spent, and the whole cycle started all over again.
So people lost their jobs and probably their homes and more.
Now, that's all true. It started something called the Great Depression, which lasted for 10 years.
Being depressed is really bad. Is it the same thing?
It was really bad. Depression is a word that refers to how well the economy is doing. The financial health of the country was really bad, like someone who was really sick. This is the only depression we've ever had.
So if a depression is really, really bad, is there something that isn't as bad?
How about a sad session? You know, it's sad, but not full-on depression.
I love the creativity, Mac. It's actually called a recession, and there have been about 33 of those over the last 175 years.
So how do you know if you're in a recession?
Just like you measure your temperature when you're sick, people measure the health of the economy. And if it's not good for 6 months, then it's called a recession.
The recession sounds like you can rebound, but yuck, the depression sounds bad. During the depression, how many people lost their jobs?
Well, let me compare things with now. Currently, things are super good, and less than 4 people out of 100 don't have jobs who want one. In the Depression, it was over 25 people for every 100.
Wow, Dad, that's more than 6 times what it is today. That's a lot less money moving around.
You're right. Plus, over 9,000 banks failed. It was estimated about half of the banks failed from all the stuff either sooner or later. And people started to put all of their money under the mattress in their bed instead of in a bank.
That probably made things lumpy.
Yeah, and the lumpy probably made people grumpy. Did you hear that? A joke!
I heard it. Not bad, G, but definitely a dad joke. I'm absolutely sure it was pretty hard to sleep on. So I have a question for you. Do you think putting money in your mattress helped or hurt things?
Not sure.
Knowing you, Dad, you wouldn't ask the question unless it was bad.
Righto, Macaru. If the money isn't going into banks, it can't be loaned out. So companies and people can't borrow it. So you have less growth, less jobs, less innovation, and just all around less.
So everything is connected?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Dad, did we learn from the Depression so it will never happen again?
We did learn a lot of things. Most of the changes happened in 1933 and 34, which were a few years later. First, the government insured or protected all of your deposits at a bank.
Oh, I get it. After the stuff with the crash, people's money were protected by the government.
Yep, and they also created a law that every company had to be audited to make sure the numbers on their financial statements were correct.
That would help protect against companies lying. So, Dad, that means you'll always have a job if you want to be an auditor?
You're right. Since accountants are the auditors, we call this the Accountants Always Have a Job Act. This is where the CPA, or Certified Public Accountant thing, comes in.
So, the CPA audits a company's financials when they have stock they sell to the public.
You got it.
Wow, I guess learning a bit of history does explain a few things.
I agree, but this also makes me think about stocks can be risky. Were there any other times the stock market tumbled?
Yep, there were, but it didn't end up in the Great Depression. Remember, there have only been one of those. But stocks had issues in 1987, 2000, 2008, and some other more recent decreases.
So it sounds like there's risk when you own stocks. There was one big depression and around 30 recessions. Maybe we'll talk about those some other time.
Yeah, I need to rest my arm.
I guess no more video games for you for a while.
No, wait, I didn't mean that. I can still play with my other arm.
That's what I thought. And no more hoverboard. Promise?
Promise. Thanks, Dad. That was interesting.
Yeah, Dad, thanks.
Can you believe it? G-Man really broke his arm. If it's not one thing, it's another. But at least he got the cast in Colts Blue. Now, the stock market crash can be boiled down into three things: easy access to money, issues with companies' financials, and excessive spending. When it all came crashing down, it was quick and had a big ripple effect. Stock prices fell, loans defaulted, banks went bankrupt, people lost their money, their jobs, and their homes. And it lasted 10 years. Unemployment and the number of people without homes went sky high. On the bright side, there was a ton of great stuff that came out of the Depression. Banks implemented FDIC insurance to protect your deposits. The Securities and Exchange Acts of 1933 and 34 were set up to protect people who bought stocks. It was a very tough time. And imagine the stock market traded information through a mechanical device or machine that typed out the prices of stocks on a little piece of ticker tape. Not instantly like computers do nowadays. Since things were so crazy and technology was slow, there were times that this ticker tape would be delivering information hours later or even hours after the stock market closed. Can you imagine? If it was behind, you could get a quote on the price of a stock hours after it already dropped 20%. This period of time was absolutely fascinating. Technology was considerably different. We never had a situation like this in our country's history, but we did learn some things that we implemented to help protect